talking about putting together a complete program for our athletes, we have to take care of them. Our goal is not to make them feel like Brian felt a couple times, crawling out, ready to throw up. That's not our goal, not every day. Sometimes it is. When I meet with a potential new client, one of the first things that I tell them is that my first job is to keep you healthy. My first job, my first goal is to keep you healthy. Because if you're not healthy, you're not on the court. You're not getting better, you're not training. Okay? So the goal of any workout program, first and foremost, should be to keep you injury-free. And some of the things that we're going to talk about today go along those same lines. One of the first things that we want to talk about is being able to do an assessment. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing and try to show you exactly how to look for different little things, but I just want you to be aware, especially as you work with younger athletes, 10 and unders, 12 and unders, that this is a time where they have special needs. Okay, so from between ages 5 through 12, their goal are the ABCs: agility, balance, coordination. So that's the three things that we really want to work on with those. In fact, between the ages of 5 and 11, the greatest leaps in agility are seen. That's where we will be able to make the most progress. And we want to keep it with those guys. We want to keep it non-sport specific. All of your kids that are 10 and under, 12 and under, even if they're elite level, even if they are elite level for 10s, you know, they're playing Little Mo Nationals and doing well there, they still need to be doing other sports. Okay, all of the studies have shown that players that reach the top 100 in the world, the elite of the elite, have not specialized until later, not specialized until age 14, 15, 16. They are developing other skills, whether they're playing soccer, they're playing basketball, they're playing baseball, whatever it is. And they are also less susceptible to the overuse injuries that we see. I just looked at a study, and this past week actually, and it had a breakdown of different injuries for players 12 and under, 14 and under, 16 and under, 18 and under. And one of the things that stood out to me was that at the younger ages, there are almost no injuries to the hips. But what is one of the most common injuries that we've seen over the last 10 years on the pro tour are hip injuries. You can go through the whole list from Guga Kirtan, Andre Agassi, Nisha Corey, now Bandian. There are plenty of players who have hip issues. And the reason is that as you get older, the game gets faster, you get stronger, and the makeup of the game changes a little bit. And there's a lot more lateral, there's a lot more loading, open stance, there's a lot more shearing force that you're able to generate as you use your legs. Okay? We don't see that. 10-year-olds, even if they can go out and hit an open stance forehand, an open stance backhand, they're not able yet to generate the power through their legs that will create that shearing force that's so tough as we get older. So, but by the same token, we need to start concentrating on this, on the hips at that age for a lot of different reasons. The number one reason is it protects the knees. And in that study, the biggest incident, percentage-wise, of knee injuries of all the age groups is 12 and under. So we get our kids out and we want to do some frog jumps and they're hopping along and they're having fun and we think that it's totally safe. But we watch the kid and as soon as he goes down into a squat position or as soon as he goes to push out of it, his knees come together. That's not safe. That's why we need to be able to do at least a little bit of an assessment on our athletes. So that's one of the things right there that you can look for. It's called valgus, where the knees come together. It's estimated from a couple of studies I've read that between 80 and 85% of non-contact knee injuries are hip related. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is glute activation and how to protect not only the hips, but also the knees. Okay? So when we do an assessment, we're basically watching them move, looking for weaknesses, talking to the player, talking to the parent. Because one of the other things that happens is we all develop compensations. So I will ask, before we go into the assessment, we go through a complete medical history. And we start literally from the ground up. If you ever had any injury to your feet, ankles, shins or calves, knees, all the way up. And the reason is, you may not think anything about it, but when you sprained your right ankle when you were 11, you developed some sort of compensation that now that you're 15 is affecting your left hip and you didn't even know about it. So what we're looking for when we do the assessments are tightnesses, weaknesses, imbalances. The body is a lever system. So as long as we're in balance, everything works well together. But once we go out of balance, one side has to compensate. Something has to give. Something has to work harder, take more of the workload, and as that happens, we're opening ourselves up to injury. So the other thing that what we want to start with is we want to start with our warm-up. Okay? So our normal warm-up, what do we normally do? Kids come out, they do a couple of laps around the court, good to go, maybe a couple of butt kicks, high knees, maybe something with the bands to warm up their shoulders, and all right, we're ready to go. The pros that I work with, it's going to be probably 15 to 20 minutes, and they're going to be pouring sweat before they go out to hit a ball. Okay, we need to warm up the entire body. There's a progression to it. So we want to raise the core temperature. That's our jog around the court. One of the other things that we'll do is we'll do jumping jacks. Okay, then we want to do our walking stretches. Then we move into our dynamic warm-up. Okay, after our dynamic warm-up, we'll move into some activation work. Now we're ready to go. Now we're ready to get out and play. And I'm going to go through and I'll show you within the makeup of it, again, there's a logical progression to everything that we do. Okay? Everything that we do has an exercise science basis. So with our first one, Brian, come on out. We can take it easy today. So one of the first things we do is we want to raise the core temperature. So that's where we do our jog around the court. We do our jumping jacks. Right, I tell you what, let's do 15 just jumping jacks. It's nice and warm. Loosening up a little bit. You may or may not sweat today. I'm going to be nice. And then we're going to go, that's good. So now we might go 3 different ways. So now we might go with our clap. We're just warming up, we're raising the core temperature. At this time it's okay. They can still be chatting, talking about school, talking about what they did over the weekend. Now let's do one more, Brian. Let's do our crossovers. So you're crossing legs and arms. So especially with our younger kids, this starts to challenge you just a little bit. Okay? There's a little proprioceptive work going on. So again, for our younger kids, this is a great way to go, a great progression to go through. All right, very good. So now we've done that. Now we're going to go into some of our walking exercises. Okay? And we always go in the order of linear, lateral, and transverse. Linear, lateral, and transverse. When a baby learns how to walk, where does he go? He goes forward. This is how we learn to walk. We don't learn to walk like this. We might take that step and sway side to side, but we're still working on going in a linear fashion. Okay? So that's the progression that we want to follow. That's why we want to start with linear. By the way, that same idea holds true as we start to teach our strokes. All right? So when we start talking about with a younger kid, just working on this linear movement and then being able to move out and still hit linear, okay? Then we can get into more of our lateral, more of our transverse plane, all right? So just a couple of ones that we're gonna do. And Brian, what you can do is you can just go back and forth here. I'm gonna show you quite a few different ones, and what you will do is you won't do the same one every day. You can pick and choose and mix it up a little bit so it doesn't get redundant for them. So the first one we're going to do is just a walking knee pull. Okay, step, pull up. Now what we're getting here is an active stretch. Okay? If I ask Brian just to do a walking high knee, he's going to come to here. So now we're getting a little bit more. So this would be considered passive. What he's doing would be considered active. One of the things that I'll do too is sometimes what I'll do to keep things fresh is I'll mix in the walking part with the dynamic part. All right, so now we're going to come back. We're going to go with our ankle grabs, or stretching out into the quad again, just on our linear fashion. And then the next one, Brian, is going to be your leg cradles. So you're grabbing here, grabbing the ankle, not the foot. We want to make sure that we're not here. Some players, some trainers don't like this one as much because of the position it puts the knee in. Right? If that's an issue, personally, I like it because it stretches piriformis. But if so, we can do the moving one where we just simply bring it up and out without putting any more undue pressure on it. Okay. All right. So we've got our linear. So now we're going to go one more. So we're going to go into our duck walks. So we're going to step down, step out, 45-degree angle, stay nice and low. And now we'll also start to add the backwards. So we'll go out forward, and then we'll come back doing the same thing. And then he would do that, you can stay there. And he can do that coming back as well, coming backwards. All right? Another of our walking stretches is going to be our airplanes. Okay? So we're on one leg, and we just stretch it out, a couple steps, nice and balanced. As you go through, and they're doing the warm-up, they're doing the movement, you can look for certain things. Okay, so I can look to see if on one leg or the other, maybe he's a little more unstable. So that's something that I will make a note of. This, by the way, would be a hip instability. Another thing that I might look at would be to see if his foot comes straight back or not. That one goes out to the side a little bit. Brian's a little tight in that left hip. But he knew that, because I probably told him that before.
Oh yeah. Trainer Dijon tells me the same thing. Slow my hips, start over.
It doesn't take long to see it when you know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So now we're just going with our walking openers. So we're going to come forward, opening forward, and then when we go back, we're going to go back the other way. Again, as we start to add a little bit more of a challenging motion, we can see if there's any imbalance, any instability, and then same thing going back and opening. Good. If he had shorts on, one of the things that I would look at doing these is if his knee is staying in alignment or if his knee is turning. All right, now, one more. Everyone's favorite, inchworms. You stretch it out, walk your hands out. You can add a push-up. You can also add a scap push-up, and then walk it back in.
You walk it back in and set it.
Walk your hands towards you.
Yeah, walk it.
Then you come out, get a push-up, walk your feet to your hands.
That's what I did the first time.
Right.
Yeah. That's how I did that.
we can see the blood rushing to his head. He's not used to that. Makes the brain work. There you go. Usually 3 is good. Maybe 4. Good. Inchworms. Inchworms. 2 more, and now we're getting a little bit more. We're going into our yoga lunge. So we're coming down into a lunge, and we're going to reach back, all the way down, and reach back. Feel into the hip flexor stretching. Tennis players, pretty much all of us, but especially tennis players, are prone to tight hip flexors. We spend a lot of time in a crouch position tightening this up. So this is a really good way to get back into that range of motion, because think about it, not only as you move, but also as you hit, one of the things that we want to do is drive the hip into the ball. Okay, so we do spend a lot of time in this position, so we need to open that back up. Last one, we can do it moving, or we can do it static, or we can do it staying in one place. We're going to do what's called the world's greatest stretch. So we come into our lunge, hands down, turn all the way up into facing your knee, come back, and here. This is going to stretch out into the calves, the hamstrings, the hips, the hip flexors, the lower back, upper back. And again, you can see the progression that we're going on. We're not starting with something where we're adding into multiple planes of motion, but now we're starting to progress to that. Also, we're progressing into a little bit more of our activation. All right? You can see Brian about to start sweating already. Good? All right. So now we're going to go into our lateral moves. Okay? First one is just lateral. Step it out, reach it out, down and back. So we're going in both directions. Coming back. Depending on what we have going on for that day, we might add the bands and do monster walks with the bands attached at the ankles. Now we're going to move into our linear motion, so our dynamic motions. All right, so now we're going to go high knees. Again, I like to do these forward and back. Coming backwards is good, right? Come on back. Coming backwards, we add a little bit more of a different element, a little bit more of a proprioceptor, see how we're doing. And now we're going to go to butt kicks. So, Brian, do you remember how I like to see butt kicks done? Generally, what we see is this, where the knees stay at the same height and the foot just comes up. Okay? Yeah. So what I want to see is, imagine that you have a string attached to your heel, and it's pulling your heel straight up to your butt. Okay, so now we're activating the glute. Okay, so now we're coming up this way as opposed to this way. Go ahead. There. And again, when I stand behind him, I can see that left hip. Okay. As a general rule, every player that I've worked with, regardless of age, ability level, athletic ability level, they all come to me and they're quad dominant. And again, we spend a lot of time in this position. Okay. From a standpoint of being more explosive, and also from a standpoint of the way the muscle should fire, we want to be hip dominant or glute dominant. So this warm-up, that part of it with the butt kicks, I like doing that because, again, it's an activation as well as a dynamic move. And so we're getting the brain thinking, okay, this is what the order we want to fire. We want to fire the glute before the hamstring fires. Okay? That takes pressure off the lower back, and it also takes pressure off the hamstring injuries. Okay? So that one is a little bit different, but That's generally the way we like to see that one done. All right, now we're going to go into our skips. Okay, so we're going to go A, B, C. So the first one is just an A skip. There. Skipping, of course, is a progression that leads to running. All right? Oh, now we're going to go B skip. So now the knee comes up, and then we're going to extend the foot out. We're going to extend out and paw at the ground, pull you through. Like this. There. One of the other things that you'll see as we start to make things a little more difficult, we want to make sure that the arms are still moving. Okay, so you can see Brian that time. So on the A skip, his arms were nice and coordinated. On the B skip, because he was having to think about it, the arms suddenly didn't move as much. We want to make sure that we're staying coordinated. All right, the last one is our C skip, and this is our bounce up and out. There, switch legs every time. Again, we're going to challenge the coordination now. And now coming backwards, same thing, Brian. Very good. Got a little rhythm. Very good. All right, so now we're going to go lateral. So let's start easy, just a little shuffle. There, back. Fade down, heads back. Good, coming back. And now we're going to go with a push shuffle, which is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to go on that same motion, but we want to push. We're trying to get across the court in as few pushes as possible. Stretch it out. A little more power, a little more pop to it. Good. Coming back. Now we're going to challenge it a little bit. So now we're going to do lateral high knees. One of the things that we want to do, remember we're just going lateral, we're not going transverse yet, so I want to make sure that his feet don't cross as he goes. There you go, very good. Don't forget the arms. There, now coming back. All right, last one, Brian. Lateral skips now. Again, not crossing the knees, not crossing the feet, using the arms. There you go. Very good. Coming back, same thing. Good. All right. Couple where we're going to go into transverse. We're going to start with a big karaoke. When we're doing karaoke, what we want to remember is that it is a hip motion, not a footwork motion. Okay, it is a hip motion, not a footwork motion. So we don't want to keep the hips square and move the feet. We want to turn the hips. Remember what our goal is for this. It's transverse movement. Okay, so big steps, getting out there. His hips should be turning. That's very good. Coming back. His hips should be turning about 180 degrees. So when he steps back, he should be facing this way with his hips. And when he comes back in front, he should be this way with his hips. Now we're going to go small ones. Okay? There. Notice he's got his arms moving. One of the things that we can add to this, Brian, is to pop the knee over when it comes in front. So we can add this motion. Pop. Pop. Good. There. Bring it up there. All right. Very good. One more, Brian. You stay right there. Arms out. Heels together. And we're going to do fairies. So we're side to side. Again, trying to get the hips 180 degrees. Very good. Can we get a towel for Brian? You can see we got a good sweat going. He would be ready to hit right now. We haven't even done any activations yet. Okay? But he's moved in every plane he has progressed from just a nice static position to some movement into his dynamic movement. One note about your warm-up. All of us feel better or worse on a given day. Okay? So you may have a day, your players may have a day where they come out and 8 minutes, they're good to go. But especially as we get older, like me, we have a lot more of those days where we need 15, 18 minutes before we're ready. And that's why your warm-up is very much an individualized thing. Okay? When I was working with Alex Bogomolov, there you go. When I was working with Alex, we went through all the different exercises, saw what he liked, what he didn't like, and we had it broken down to a basic of 12 minutes. And we were really precise with it. But I made sure that he understood some days he may not need all of that, and some days it might take 15, 16, 18 minutes. Okay? So again, it just depends. Oh, that's what I like to see. It just depends day to day how you feel. All right? So we're just going to do a couple of easy activations. All right? So Brian, let's do 5 squats, just a little body weight squat. So again, when he's doing these, I'm not just looking at my watch, talking to somebody else. Hold on, stop right there. One of the things I noticed straight away is that, I'm going to show you from the side, is that as he's doing these, he's doing this, and his heels are coming up off the ground, and his knees are pushing forward out past his toes. Okay? So he's completely quad dominant at that point. Remember, we're activating. What are we trying to activate here? Our glutes. Okay? A proper squat form is to sit back into the heels. Okay? So I would stop him and say, okay, Brian, stay back into your heels. And now what I'll do is I'll put my hand here and push him back so that as his knee comes forward too far, he hits my hand. Okay? So that's one of the little corrections that we're going to make. All right? So now, Brian, let's go lunge. Forward and back. Let's go 3 each leg. Again, we're progressing from one position to a linear position. And now, Brian, we're going to go lateral. It's going to be a lateral lunge. 3 each way. One of the things that I want to see from him here, hold on, stop right there. Don't move. Don't move. Notice how his foot, as he stepped out, has opened up. Okay? So he's opened up here. What we want to see is we want that foot to stay in the same position. We want to point it straight ahead as he comes out. Okay? And now his knee is in a better position to push back. And you can see as he does that, how he's still going a little bit forward onto his toes. Sit back into it, push your hips back. There. One of the cues that I give for proper squatting, RDL, whatever, is that first move is with your hips coming back. And I say, think about you have a tray and you have a door behind you that you have to open. Okay? That's the difference between a squat motion and a hip hinge. Okay? So we want to be able to get the hips back as opposed to coming straight back. Activating into the glutes. Now we're going to go from a double leg to a unilateral. So we're going to do what's called an anterior reach. So he's going to be on one foot. I'm on my left foot. So my right foot goes back and my right hand goes forward. And it just drops straight down. You can see I'm mimicking a running motion. Okay? So let's do three each way of those, Brian. There you go. So now you can see you're starting to challenge that left hip instability that he has. There you go. Other leg. There you go. Good. Good. And now one thing that we can add to that is we can add a little hop to it. So we just pop up off the ground. Chest stays up. There he goes. You can do 2 or 3 that way as well. You saw it, right? I thought he was transitioning to the next one. One more that we're going to show is as long as, since we already have our bands attached to the net, leg now, my base leg is going to stay straight. And I'm coming here. Band is pulling me forward. So as the band pulls me forward, I have to learn to sit back into my glute and not let it pull me over. I have to be able to sit back. Come on. Catch your breath for a moment. Let me give you a break. So now we can go again. Look at what he looks like. We haven't done our shoulders yet. Just a couple of quick things, because I know all of us do the internal, the external rotations, etc. I want you to be aware of a couple of things. As you do your internal and external rotations, we don't need this range of motion. Okay, we have different muscles working through that. By the way, these are the best bands to have that hook on. Once we get to here, a different group is going to take over to get to here. So all we need to do is this. Same thing. All we need to do on the external rotation is get to here. All right? While we're talking about the shoulders, we're going to move into that now. Let's start with our hands. Again, we talked about that most tennis players are quad dominant, and we want to teach them to be glute dominant, hip dominant. Okay, that's why these activations are so important. And you can see just in those little things that Brian was doing, for me to go down and demonstrate this that he's doing to him, I can feel that. I can feel that in my knee. Okay, now I'm a little bit older than Brian, but even so, that's why it's so important. Again, I mentioned that most non-contact knee injuries are somehow hip related. Okay, and this is especially important for your girls. Okay, guys and girls are built differently. Okay, guys, we are built hips, knees, ankles, straight down, nice and strong. Girls are built hips, knees, ankles. If you were building something, which of those is going to be stronger? Which is going to have a better support base? Straight here or bowed in. That's why you see so many girls with with knee strapping. Okay? It's vital that our girls become able to activate the glute medius, the outside part of the hip, which is going to help protect their knees. Okay, that's why that is so important. Again, also, we talked earlier about it, as we learn to get out and load that outside leg as the game gets faster and we drive off of it. And also, as we continue that momentum into a stop and then back into another direction, we need to be stable in that position. More injuries occur in the deceleration phase of a movement than in the acceleration phase. Okay? Where are the majority of shoulder injuries? Here. What do these muscles do? They slow the arm down. Okay? The rotator cuff acts to stabilize the arm and slow the arm down. So, to be able to get properly glute activated, so that we're protecting the knees and so that we're becoming more explosive is something that we've got to be able to do. One of the things that we'll do too with this next group is we will mix these in when we're in the gym. These will be considered correctives or auxiliary exercises. So we might do squats and then do one of these. When we travel, maybe we play on Tuesday, have a day off on Wednesday, playing again on Thursday. We'll put together just a group of correctives that we'll do, and that will be the workouts. So there's a lot of different ways that we use these. We also use these as prehab. This would be something that you would see players doing in rehab as well when they're coming back from the gym. Okay, so the first one I just demonstrated was the activation, was the RDL with the band. Okay. The next one we also saw was the anterior reach. Okay? So again, one of the things that we're going to let you see that again right now. You got your shorts on. So what I'm going to look for, go ahead. This one? Yep. What I'm going to look for is that his knee can stay centered up and pointed in the same direction as his toes. Try to do it without putting your right foot down. There you go. Let me see you do 6 of them. So you can see how he's getting there. He's in pretty good shape. If I'm working, like with Brian, I would say, okay, this is something that we need to work on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the band, give him a little pressure. So I'm going to pull his knee into where it goes, where it wants to go, but where I don't want it to go. And I'm going to force him to activate into his glute out here. Go ahead. To keep that knee pointed. Go ahead. There you go. Keep that knee pointed in the same direction as the toe. Coming into your toes a little too much. And weight a little more. There you go. There. So that's a technique that we will use on a lot of different exercises. We use those on the slide board where we'll have the player coming back and coming up. And we'll do the same thing. We'll pull on the knee like that. Again, the explosive part, adding in the hop to that. What we can do, you can take a tennis ball can, take a water bottle, let you do this. All right, so you have to come down, touch the bottle, pop up, upright, your shoulders and hips are lined up, land, and do it again 6 times. Stay on. There you go. There. Come up a little higher. Drive up. There you go. Very good. See where he's getting. The reason that we have this down here is you can see that last one, he started to shift out. We want him to be able to do it and stay stationary. That's showing us that we're getting that stability out. Okay? So what you'll see is going to look more like this. I'll come down. Oh, that's nothing. Whoa, how do I get back to the bottom now? And so you'll see that movement around, and that's why it's there. That's why we put it there. Again, that's going to be a progression. That's not something that we're probably going to do with our 10-year-olds, but that's something that we're going to do with our 16-year-olds, our 14-year-olds, our elite players. Okay? The next one is our glute bridges. And we've got a lot of different ways that we'll do these. The basic is simply here, I've got my heels into the floor, I squeeze and pop up. We're looking for a straight line from the knees to the shoulders. So again, activating my glute and popping up. Now we can add a single leg, making it a little bit more difficult. Again, to make it a little more difficult, we'll put the foot, we'll put one foot or put both feet on a stability ball. So you drive the heels in. The key to the exercise is driving the heels. If you push in with the toes, then you're going to activate into your quad. We want to drive in with the heels. Okay, that one progresses all the way up to becoming an actual motion we'll do with a barbell across and generating force up through. Which, by the way, is one of the better ways for tennis players to develop hip explosion rather than by doing cleans. One of the things that we don't let any of our tennis players do are hanging cleans, because when you come up and land and catch the weight in this position, you're putting the wrist in a compromised position. And besides the hip, the other big injury over the last decade has been wrist injuries. I've had 3 players in the last 2 years that had wrist surgery. 2 of them had the same surgery that Del Potro had done by the same surgeon. So doing this is not something that we want to do. Doing it on the floor is a better way to do it.
So you're talking about lifting weights is what hurt their wrist? How did they hurt their wrist? They were doing what this way?
I wouldn't let them do it,
okay.
But when they do a hanging clean, so they've got a barbell,
yeah.
drive up, and what you're trying to develop is force through the hips.
Okay.
So it's an Olympic lift that pushes the hips forward. Then you drive through, and then you catch the barbell here. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's just to do that. Now think about putting enough weight on a barbell to make the exercise worthwhile, that's a lot of strain on the wrist.
Okay.
So that's something that, and I've spoken to Mark Kovats about that, and he agrees 100%. We don't want to do that. The next one are heel touches. And what we're going to do, we really, you're in love. What we'll do is we'll stand on a box or on a bench, and we'll lower down until the heel touches the floor, and then pop back up. You can't do it on these chairs; they're not stable enough. And so, you're in luck. I will. If any of you want to see that, I'll demonstrate that. Again, now we're going to move into. So we've got our adductors and abductors. Yep, just on one. So now on your left foot, and then taking your right foot and pulling it out. There. Try to not put your foot down. So this is working as he's pulling, but really his left leg is the one doing the work because that's his stabilizer. To make this more challenging, we put him on a balance pad. And now we'll turn around. You can see how quickly, as soon as he starts to go forward, which is what he wants to do, he wants to get his weight into his toes, that's where he starts to lose that stability. We've got an abduction and an adduction. One of the things for tennis players too is we need to have a lot of ankle mobility. Okay, so we will do a simple, it's called anterior fifth, but just toe tap. So we just come all the way up into dorsiflexion, all the way out into plantar flexion. So we just do our toe taps. So we use these a lot when we're working on the Vertimax. When we're working on that explosive part, then we go to our corrective, and we get here. If we have players that have weak ankles, players that have had ankle sprains, torn ligaments, then we'll get them on the bench, we'll add the band to it, and they're getting here, then we'll flip it, we'll pull it back the other way, then we'll get the full range of motion from the ankle, going in all four directions. The last one is called mulligan mobility. Again, it's for the ankles, and we talked about not wanting the knees to go past the ankles, but there are times when we're playing when that's going to happen. If I come down for a low volley and continue that motion, I'm not holding it there, but I'm coming through that range. Okay? And so we do need quite a bit of dorsiflexion in the ankle. So what we'll do is, right, stand facing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that weak ankle, and I'm going to push down right at the crease, and I'm pushing me forward. Yep, keep your heel down. There, keep your heel down. There. There. So we're going to work that, we're going to lock the ankle in, and then work on that mobility. Okay. All right, any questions about the hip? Okay, yes?
I have heard that the hip helps prevent old school ways to do your quads, your hamstrings, toe raises, hip abs, and abs to cover. Not just in kneecap, which girls do,
Right.
ACL injuries.
Right.
But now I'm seeing physical therapists with me and with my son. I'm really, like you would say, concentrating more on the hips.
Correct. The reason is the old school was on the machines and doing the leg extensions and the leg curls. The hamstrings, the legs don't work that way. So what a lot of PTs and what a lot of strength coaches are doing now is we're doing things that apply to how you actually move. One of the things that I always tell people is it doesn't matter what strength gains you make in the gym, how much faster we make you, how much stronger we make you. If it doesn't apply on the court, then why are we doing it? Okay, so if you take a look at sprinters and then you take a look at marathon runners, they look completely different. Okay, they don't train to look that way. They look that way because of how they train. So there's not a motion. You talk about doing abduction and adduction, sitting in the machine. So there's not a time where this is the motion that you make. So that's not something. It's not real world, and so a lot of PTs have gotten away from that and gotten more into a lot of the motion. And that's why these mulligan mobilities, especially with movement, have become a lot more popular with PTs lately.
And then I've also heard through my son, 2 ACLs with tennis, so I wanted to go out. I mean, through soccer, so I wanted to go to tennis.
Mm-hmm.
It's self-inflicted as opposed to somebody else inflicting it.
Right.
And I've been hearing that if your hamstrings are overdeveloped, that can lead to ACL tears.
ACL and meniscus.
So how does that?
It's because if your hamstrings are overdeveloped, you have an imbalance between the back and the front. So what we want to have that would be when that's the case, because I had a player like that last year. She had a meniscus issue. She didn't need surgery, but she had a major imbalance. So I got her tested, and her hamstring was something about 8.5 times stronger than her quads. So we did spend a month doing this type of motion just to strengthen that. And we work that with things like the anterior reaches, which are working both together. So we're pulling everything back together.
Now, can you
and
make
that's
that
why.
determination? Do you have to have like a Cybex type machine to test it?
Generally,
or can you do
yes.
You can't do it visually as a coach?
No. I had to send her to get tested to get the results back. Okay, very quickly, with the shoulder. The shoulder and the hip are very similar in that they are both ball and socket. Okay? They are also the only two joints that have motion in 3 planes. The difference is this: the hip is a nice deep socket, and the head of the femur sits into it very nicely. The shoulder, on the other hand, is much more fragile. The socket is a lot more shallow. And so the head of the humerus will move around a lot more. Okay? I like you to do, if you picture a seal, a trained seal with a ball bouncing on his nose, that's what your shoulder looks like. Your hip doesn't look that way. A couple of other things quickly in regards to the shoulder. Generally, we have muscles that are reciprocal. So if I take my arm and I curl my arm, my bicep is active, my tricep is relaxed. Now as I extend it again, my tricep is contracting, so my tricep is active, my bicep is relaxed. Same thing that we were talking about with your quad and your hamstring. Okay? With the shoulder, there is very little, if any, reciprocal motion. Okay? All of the muscles are active throughout the range of motion. And a further kicker along those same lines is that as you move through the range of motion, the prime movers and the stabilizers go back and forth. So without getting too detailed into anatomy, as you get starting up, you have certain muscles that are prime movers and certain muscles that are stabilizers. Into the next range of motion that changes, and then as we complete the full range, it switches back, basically. Okay? One of the other things is we don't do anything overhead pressing with our tennis players unless we're using the legs, unless we're developing hip strength, hip power as well. And this is not really a position that we get into. This is not a position that elite players get into. Okay? If you think about the serve, what you have is a thoracic lean. We've all taught that. Right over left, right over left. So at contact, I'm here. But I have this thoracic lean, so when I come back, my arm is only about 100 degrees range of motion. Okay? So this isn't even an area that we do a lot in. Even on an overhead, we don't get quite into this position. So because of the frail nature of the shoulder and the muscles around it, we stay away from anything weighted up here. Okay? Along that same line, one of the things that I can't stand is to see this stretch. Okay, you can see how my shoulder is pushed forward. Remember I said that that ball moves around in the socket a lot more than it does in the hip. So when we take that arm behind us, the ball moves into an anterior position, moves forward in the capsule. And so it's in a compromised position. Remember, the job of the muscles around the shoulder is to keep the humerus in that socket. So as we start to get here and then crank it and put more pressure on it, we're putting it into a further compromised position. Okay? So we can get here in a passive way, but we don't want to come back any further than that. Okay? I'm going to show you a way to do that. This will be nice and relaxing for you. Alright, so you're going to lie down on the foam roller with your spine along it and your feet flat. So, one of the things that we do all day long, what do? We internally rotate. We internally rotate. By the way, when you go in the gym, okay, you don't need to do internal rotation. You need to do external rotation. You need to correct that. Some things, some imbalances we can't fix. Okay, if you look at any of your players that have been playing for a while, I guarantee you that what you will see is that their dominant shoulder is lower than their non-dominant. One of my kids came to me about a year ago. She was 15, and she came into the gym, and she turned around and she said, "Look at my shoulders." I said, "Yeah." She's left-handed. She said, "See how my left shoulder is lower than my right shoulder?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "My coach wants you to fix that." I said, "You tell Ian," I knew her coach pretty well. I said, "You tell Ian the only way I can fix that is if you stop playing tennis for the next 3 years." Okay, so there are certain things that we can't fix, okay, that we don't need to. All right, Brian, so on the foam roller, but we can open this back up. All right? So, I want you to move down so that that little crack in your head right here is at the base of the foam roller. There. Now, put your arms out straight. Point your palms up. There. Now just relax. This will open you back up. This will open you back up. All right? So, if you can get on, by the way, if you get on a treatment table and let it open so that your hands can come down even farther, even better. All right? We will also do exercises from this, so we will come up and back. Okay? He has his shoulder blades digging into the foam roller. The other thing that he's getting in between his shoulder blades is a nice myofascial release. All right? Now, do this, Brian. Now put your arm to this angle. Feel that? The key is this. Come up even a little bit more. They don't have to touch it. They can't. The key is to keep the hands pointed up. If his hands point down, he is going back into internal rotation. So this is a great way to recover. Especially after a long match, a long tournament, a hard training session on the court where you've done this all day long. Now we're going to open them back up. Put your hands back here. Just relax. It's kind of relaxed. It's a that hurts so good relax. Okay? So this is how we're going to recover and take care of the shoulder. I'm out of time. I want to show you one more thing. Come on, Brian. Good job. You guys give him a hand. I want to tell you one more technique that we use. And I use this with my players at tournaments, at training. I also have them do this after a long flight. Okay? Going to South America, going to Australia, going to Europe, anything, long flight is one of the first things I want them to do. This is also a great recovery tool after a long match. It's called a leg flush. So what they're going to do is, I prefer to do it on the bike. They can do it on the treadmill at a very, very, very slow pace. Okay? Like no pressure on the pedals, just nice, easy turn. Just nice, easy turn for 5 minutes. And then what you're going to do is, they're going to go over, they're going to lie down, and they're going to put their feet up on the wall, and they're just going to sit here and relax. And everything is rushing back towards the heart. If I'm with them, I will take my tiger tail and push everything back down. I'll roll out from their quads to their calves and their hamstrings, pushing everything back down towards the heart. So we'll do that for 5 minutes. And then we will repeat that 3 times. That leg flush will work. When I worked with Jessie Pagula, she had no issues recovering. Jameer Jenkins does this all the time. I had him do it. He was just down in Australia. He played like 8 weeks out of 9, and he did very well. And the last tournament, they had a rain day, and he ended up with a day off, and he wanted to be ready. I said, after 9 weeks going hard like that, do a leg flush. Okay, it feels so good. It helps you recover, and I am more inclined to do that than to do an ice bath. I have a little bit more of an Eastern idea that I prefer heat to cold. I just want to get the blood flowing. So that is a great way. Trust me, I do it all the time too at my age. So it feels good. That leg flush, 5 minutes on the bike, 5 minutes with your feet up. Repeat that 3 times. You've got a half hour and you're done. Anybody have any questions?
How much does speed depend on the workout that you're doing?
If we're doing just as a warm up, it's not an issue. Control. You can. A lot of it will depend on how good you feel that day. Some days you'll start a little slower. Some days you'll feel it just naturally going. As long as the technique is good. What you'll see with a lot of the kids is they'll try to rush through it. Yes. So you can tell the difference between they feel good and they're just moving freely and they're just trying to get it done. Don't let them just get it done. Cool down, we'll do a lot of most players after a match will come in, immediately get on the bike, get on the treadmill, and then we would go into some of the same motions, a lot of the walking motions, a lot of stretching. One of the things that I'll do too is I'll get them down and I'll get their legs up and I'll just shake their legs out. So they don't go from 100 miles an hour to doing nothing. We're going to get on the bike, we're going to get on the treadmill, we're going to walk around. We might do some easy movement stuff. Okay, again, bringing it down slowly.
Which is a no-no stretch for the shoulder, you said?
Taking it against the wall or taking it against the, or having somebody.
Is that also bad?
This one is not as bad,
Just don't do it at all.
but you're better not doing it at all. There's a lot of other ways to do it.
All the warm-up exercises, how many times do you repeat each one?
Usually, like on the court, we would just go across and
The
back.
things that Ryan is balancing out, and the lunges. you
Yeah,
just
just across, probably across one time with
And
those.
then you do a different one back.
Yep.
And if you don't have access to a bike or those things to cool down, can you just do
Same
like
motions, same motions, but nice and easy. So you would progress the other way. So you might do an easy high knee and then into a walking knee pull as you bring it back down. See? Anybody else? I will be around. I know kids, they're giving me the red line. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.